watching the Mystical Green Beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and today I wanted to talk about Carol Danvers. So, Carol Danvers is a character who is the subject of a lot of controversy. Essentially, you know how in wrestling, when the promoters try and push a wrestler to be a face, and, to be a good guy, and the crowd just ain't having it. Because for whatever reason, the audience feels as though that wrestler doesn't deserve that push, and they don't deserve to be A-list. At least not yet, anyways. That's exactly what's happening with Carol Danvers over at Marvel Comics, and has been happening for the past 7 or so years. And I've spoken with people personally who've said that Carol Danvers is just a bad character, and she doesn't deserve a push at all. Now, look, I don't think that Carol Danvers is a bad character, but she does need some work. And all she needs is that one definitive run that makes everyone stand back and say, oh, now you're ready for prime time. Because as of right now, she's not. But that's not a bad thing, and it's not the end of the world. Some characters just take a while to find their footing, and Carol Danvers is just one of those unlucky, but potentially really lucky characters. Now, this is actually something that's far more common than I think people realize, because not every A-list character hits the ground running. In fact, very few do. Few do. It's an in-joke that I have with my friends. Never mind. Anyways, a lot of characters who we think of as A-list now weren't always A-list characters. And I'm not just talking about the obvious Star-Lord or Black Widow or characters who were elevated to icon status from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm talking about characters like Batman. So for those of you who don't know, in 1939, two guys named Bill Finger and Bob Kane created this character named Batman. And for all intents and purposes, he was a ripoff of this old pulp character called the Shadow. And while he was designed to rival the success of Superman, who was the most popular character at the time, he didn't. In fact, DC didn't know what to do with him for over 30 years. The dude went from being a murderous vigilante to being a weird, family-oriented science fiction protagonist to just being a synergy engine for the Adam West Burt Ward TV series. Funny. The more the comic book industry changes, the more it stays the same, right? But yeah, the iconic Dark Knight detective that we all think of when we think of Batman doesn't show up until around the early 70s, when guys like Frank Robbins, Denny O'Neil, Steve Englehart, Neil Adams, Irv Novick, Marshall Rogers, Carmen Infantino, and a bunch of others got together and spearheaded a definitive vision for the character of Batman. The same can be said for Daredevil. The character was created in 1964, but for the longest time, he was the character whose comic you'd only buy if there wasn't an issue of Spider-Man available that week. But again, in 1981, all it took was the creative genius of Frank Miller and Klaus Janson to skyrocket the character to must-read status by re-examining Matt Murdock, and while not radically changing anything about the character, they picked up on the ideas that worked and made him unique, transforming him into a blind ninja badass. And he's been an iconic staple of the Marvel Universe ever since. Green Arrow, Hawkeye, The Flash, the Doom Patrol, the Guardians of the Galaxy, the X-Men, the Teen Titans, twice. But this just goes to show that any character, any team, any book is just one editorial shakeup away from the readers saying,
so good.
And I say all this to say that I don't think Carol Danvers is a bad character or a broken character. She just needs someone to come along and do for her what Jeff Johns and Ivan Reis did for Aquaman, or what Chris Claremont and Gil Kane did for the X-Men. She just needs someone to step up and analyze the core concept of the character and put the pieces together in a way that's satisfactory for everyone. Because there's great potential in Carol Danvers, but much like with Miles Morales, as I've said many times before up until the Into the Spider-Verse movie, was also a void of wasted potential. But the pieces for a fresh, compelling character were all there. It just took the right creators to do it. And sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes it takes a team of people working in a separate medium to fully realize certain characters and ideas in comics. And maybe that'll be the case with the Captain Marvel movie. Personally, I feel like, unlike a character like Miles Morales, Carol Danvers does have enough interesting lore in the comics to pull from, but who knows? Maybe Anna Boden, Ryan Fleck, and Kevin Feige will tap into something that just wasn't there in the comics and rebuild her from the ground up on film. As for Carol in the comics, I'm not going to sit here and say that I've read every issue of Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel or the Avengers, but I've read enough to know that nobody at Marvel Comics knows what to do with her, in the same way that, for the longest time, nobody knew what to do with Batman. But the ingredients for a good character are there. She is a former Air Force pilot who was thrust into the world of being a superhero, and while originally she was doing what she was doing for the fun of it and for the adrenaline rush, she's now in a position where she's no longer an auxiliary character. And Kelly Sidekinek poked at this idea, but I don't feel like she went far enough with it. But Carol has a legacy to uphold now, and she just wants to do the best she can to honor those who came before her. You can also play with her alcohol addiction and how she deals with battling that inner demon with all the stress she's under from being the new Captain Marvel. You can do a cool meta thing with her character where she feels like she's not ready for the attention that she's getting as the proclaimed Earth's mightiest Avenger. And despite that being what she's wanted for years, she just doesn't feel like she's ready for it. Or how she's uncomfortable with the public's desire for stability, since she keeps cycling through status quo after status quo, and has burned through numerous superhero personas because that's all she's ever done since 1977. And there's something there. There's something inherently fascinating about Carol Danvers' Captain Marvel that I don't think the writers or editors at Marvel are picking up on. Because they're rushing. They're rushing to get Carol Danvers to A-list status, and when something doesn't work about a new status quo or a new run, they relaunch everything and wipe the slate clean. Again, and again, and again, and again. And it's unnecessary. Nothing else needs to be added. No more retcons, no more sudden status quo rebranding needs to be done. All you need to do now is build her up using the tools and materials that have been available to use since 2012. And if you just focus on what works and maybe retool or work around what doesn't, and you present everybody with a version of Carol Danvers that feels fresh and new, but also familiar, and most importantly, creatively earnest, then the comic book community will come together and say,
So good.
Anyways, guys, those are my thoughts, but what about you? What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you excited for the Captain Marvel movie? Are you excited for Marvel's inevitable relaunch of the Captain Marvel book series? Are you reading the current Captain Marvel book? I read the first issue. I thought it was pretty good, actually, up until the last page, but I'll see where the series goes from there. But yeah, no, let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share it with the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. Thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios.